SVC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
They shut it down, but it won't fall. It's not CIA, it's iGaming in Spain. Despite the government's efforts to enforce one clampdown after another, the segment keeps going strong, at least according to the recent figures released by the Directorate General for the Regulation of Gambling for the second quarter of 2025. I am Fernando, Noodt, SVC Media Manager and your host for today, and I am joined for this episode by Editor-at-Large Ted Menmuir. Ted, how are you today?
Good. Fernando, bon dia.
Buenos dias. Buenos dias.
Yeah, I knew you'd catch me out. Yes, it's Portuguese, guys. I know.
All right. And also with us is SVC Noticias business journalist Damian Martinez. Damian, how are you today?
All good, Fer. It's always great joining you here in the podcast and recovering a little bit from SVC Summit in Lisboa. It was a really crazy week.
Yeah. Lisbon, massive event. Great job, everyone at SVC. Great job, everyone exhibiting, attending, speaking. Really great to see everyone there. But let's crack on and get on with this news about Spain in this new episode of iGaming Daily, brought to you by Optimove. Heading to G2E, Optimove is hosting an exclusive sweepstakes industry breakfast. Get market insights and hear from some of the top names in the industry. Find more on this can't miss event in the description of this episode. So, Dami, Spanish regulator DGOJ, the Directorate General for the Regulation of Gambling, has recently published the financial results for the industry during the second quarter of the year. And why don't we break down a little bit the most important figures?
Yes, Fer. The DGOG revealed that the gross gaming revenue for the second quarter of 2025 was actually 410 million euros, representing a 2.8% increase over the previous quarter and an 18% increase compared to the same period of 2024. Actually, when analyzing the GGR by gaming segment, we can see that of the 410 million euros, 171 million was allocated to sports betting, 3.3 million to bingo, 19 million to poker, and 1,216 million to online casino, which is the biggest segment and represents 52% of the total GGR.
Okay, so industry going up, going strong, but are there any other variations worth mentioning?
Yeah, of the other major variables, players' deposits and withdrawals increased their rates compared to 2024 by 23 and 28% respectively. And compared to the previous quarters, deposits decreased by 0.3% and withdrawals increased by 0.6%. Moreover, marketing spending decreased by 0.2% compared to the previous quarter, and new accounts decreased by 11.6%, which I think is a lot.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that marketing expense going down because Spain has been under fire for some time. The royal decree that enforced almost an all-out ban on gambling advertising for the past few years, partially overturned recently in 2024 by a justice ruling. And then again, new pushes are coming after the industry. So, Ted, do you think that with these good results that show that the industry is healthy and running strong, does it mean that the market is or the industry can turn into a target for strict regulatory measures like those we were just mentioning and were being pushed by the government?
So answering this question, I think we've got to be reflective of where the Spanish market has come. And online gambling in Spain had a rough 2020 to 2021 and also 2022, in which the market slightly contracted. But again, that was not down to COVID. It was actually much more down to the strict adjustments that I had to undertake on slots. And it's the kind of surprise at the time was just the surprise inclusion of the royal decree, also the ban on bonuses and welcome incentives in a strict kind of all-out advertising ban or across Spanish media. So referencing kind of 2024 figures, the Spanish market has now grown to about 3.8 million online gambling accounts, of which 1.9 to 2 million are active on a bi-monthly basis. So it's definitely, on paper, it looks like a strong kind of growth prospects for the online players. One thing that you have to look at Spain and really kind of subtract is that, okay, you've got the online gambling market, which is about, I think, reaching about 1.5 million a year. It's reaching parity with like land-based gaming, so casinos and the retail betting sector. But it's still way behind Spanish lotteries that have a GGR of 5.5 billion a year. And that tells you something. Spaniards still love lottery. It has had no kind of generational slowing down as you've seen in other markets. And it also tells you a lot about the power that the Spanish lotteries of Once and Celea have.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see how the industry adapts to, or actually not the industry, the audiences, because I was recently speaking to some providers in the lottery segment, and they were telling me just that, there's not. You may think that, okay, lottery is a game for old people or whatever, and it's not. It's definitely not. People still enjoying that, and it's interesting to see that providers are actually going to have to make an effort to adapt the lottery into the new options that technology gives you. I mean, iGaming market and all that, to actually deliver something that is very much in demand. So I think that is actually very interesting and great that you mentioned that. But also, Spain right now is going through, of course, like we mentioned, the being targeted by the government in terms of how can we improve, quote unquote, the regulatory framework for the industry. And actually the government is pushing an AI gambling risks detection system. Detention, maybe if you break the law, but no, this is detection with AI. It's a lot of buzzwords right now for the Spanish government. What is that about?
Yes, like you said, Spain is working on a project that proposes the mandatory creation and implementation of a unified artificial intelligence-driven mechanism to detect risky behaviors among online gamblers. The model, which will utilize machine learning techniques, will analyze more than 60 variables like deposit and withdrawal amounts, frequency of play and session duration, betting patterns, and variation in stakes. The idea is to identify signals such as frequent live betting, repeated use of cash-out options, increased betting after winning, and consecutive days of play. But the system scope is limited to sports betting, horse racing, and casino games, and excludes lotteries, despite the fact that, like Ted said, they are the most popular gambling product among the Spanish population. This confirms that the mechanism only applies to the regulated private gambling markets.
I just want to add some context here because I think it's been a strange time for Spanish gambling since the government transferred the regulatory oversight of the market to the Ministry of Consumer Affairs. Now, this is an agency that has pushed for strict technical measures to be applied to Spanish gambling licenses, so universal databases, deposit limits, in-game checks. However, in a lot of these measures, it hasn't provided kind of any technical guidance, which in many cases have been left just down to the operators to kind of interpret what the regulator wants. And this is true also down to the AI monitoring system. The DGOJ wants to implement this system on Spanish gambling, observing kind of 60 specific behavioral and transactional variables in in-play gaming. However, this is seen as like the headline project of the Royal Decree for Gambling Environments, but it took them 2 years to actually give its first update, in which they said that they would bring a consultation to the market. That was announced by Miquel Arana, the Director General of Spanish Gambling, at the Gaming in Spain conference in September. A further update is expected at the end of the year. Lots of things are still up in the air with regards to this project.
Yeah, so I from what I hear from you, Ted, you're not much of a fan of how the government has approached this, really.
I mean, it's not a case of being a fan. I just report on the feedback that the industry gives me. And look, it's not that Spain lacks regulatory compliance. The operators are trying as hard to implement kind of technical measures. There's just not a lot of guidance there. The other factor here is that one of the complaints against the Consumer Affairs Ministry, especially, it's that it demands a lot out of licenses, but it doesn't give back, especially in enforcement in areas where the market is liable.
Yeah, that's definitely a trend across multiple gaming jurisdictions. And we were mentioning last week how Spain and Latin America are much alike because, of course, a lot of Latin American countries have a strong Spanish heritage. And I think that is one of the key things to address in Latin America as well, which is, okay, you may enforce whatever strictly regulations you want, you may go after the gaming industry, but you need to provide at the same time a juridical certainty, a strong fight against the illegal markets, so that all these requirements for the regulated operators are being reflected on the way they operate and how can they make the most out of the market that you give them. Because if you just enforce a lot of regulation and don't look into the illegal market, of course, they are most likely not going to be investing, and you're not going to get that juicy tax money that you're looking for. So right now, we're going to do a very brief commercial break, but we will be right back with more iGaming Daily to discuss more about Spain.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
And we're back with more iGaming Daily. A lot going on in Spain with the new results, with the government pushing some restrictions, some tools to monitor the gaming market. But despite the government's stance on gambling, which is still a bit, some may say, aggressive towards the industry, the Spanish autonomous city of Melilla, or Melilla, as we would say in Argentina, seems to remain an attractive destination for iGaming companies, doesn't it?
Yes, Fer. Due to their friendly fiscal politics toward the gambling industry, the Online Gaming Association of Melilla announced recently that the autonomous region has managed to attract 2 new companies from the sector. And a third company has expressed interest in visiting the area to see if they can invest on them. The organization explained that in addition to these 2 companies, there are other businesses that provide services to companies operating in the online gaming industry, that they are also interested in establishing their operations in Melilla. So we will have to wait and see how many companies the region is attracting.
Yeah, definitely. Both Melilla and Ceuta have been always like a big target for iGaming companies. So interesting to see they remain as such, even though there has been so much going on and so many restrictions coming from the central government. But following the good news path, Spanish giant Cirsa also reported a solid second quarter, followed by a strong valuation by the Deutsche Bank.
Yeah, no, true. And I think this is kind of reflective of kind of good, positive vibes in Spain, yes? Despite kind of all this regulatory kind of intrusion going on, the companies are showing growth, especially kind of the PLCs. Now, this has not only been seen by Thursa, but if you look at kind of Codere, they're in a much stronger platform now that their bondholders have kind of deleveraged the company and reapplied new funding in there. So you got 2 strong giants at the front of Spanish gambling, Thursa and Codere, kind of pulling not only in Spain, but in Latin America with very kind of ambitious growth plans that are going to come into play. Looking kind of holistically at the Spanish market at the moment, it seems to be kind of attracting new eyes. So the makeup's not only going to be domestic players such as Thursa and Codere, but it's got kind of new attractions. So we've seen kind of the likes of Betfred, Entain, Evoke even mentioned in its H2 that it's doubling down on Spain and reapplying on a new investment there for marketing campaigns. So it's definitely a market in which investors, and especially at the PLC levels, they view kind of a competitive landscape and one way in which they can achieve market by market growth. This is good. It's good to have a deep layer of competition. Spain is showing that.
Yeah, definitely good news for the industry, and that's been reflected on the results for the second quarter as recently published both by the government and also the individual companies, in this case, Cirsa. But speaking of Spanish giants, and funny that you mentioned Ted Codere and their aspirations in Latin America. Dami, during the recent SBC Summit, you had the chance to speak to Codere Online's CEO, Abib Sher. So why don't you tell us very briefly what did you guys talk about?
Yes, for last week at Lisboa, I speak with Abib. He told me a lot about Codere's online vision and plans at a key moment for the company's growth. The operator recently managed to overcome one of its greatest corporate challenges, which was regaining compliance with Nasdaq listings after what it looked like a complex and demanding audit process. Cher spoke a lot about the company's solid performance in its core markets, especially in Mexico. He made a strong case about the country, where the company achieved a 23% increase in net gaming revenue, despite the country's kind of like currency problems that are surging right now, and a 33% increase in its active customer base. He also shared a lot about his expectations about the upcoming regulation that will be happening in the Mexican market. According to a lot of executives from the country, around February next year, because the country is hosting the next World Cup. So the government is trying to hurry the new law for gambling.
Yeah, definitely a big opportunity to tap into there, because you already have companies operating. It's not like you have to start from zero and you have to enforce a lot of things of like regulation and bodies and whatever, but you actually have pretty much everything in place and you just need to like get the framework ready and so take advantage of the World Cup.
Absolutely. Can I just give a shout out here to AIJA, the trade body for Mexico, gambling and suppliers. And I think that the campaign that they've created to actually treat gambling not, in its economic reality, not just of gaming, but just for its marketing, for IT, for creation of jobs, for tourism, for leisure. I think it's one of the best campaigns I've seen by a trade body. I think that it's really bringing to light actually what it takes, why gaming should be regulated, what it takes to regulate gaming fairly, right? And also it's kind of principles that it's bringing to market, that it's bringing to the regulators, saying, look, these are, our points of what concerns should be raised when governing gambling. It's very kind of unique thinking. It's a campaign that, I'll be keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. And AIJA, of course, for some years now, pushing the government to actually get to work on this regulation that's very much needed. Let's remind our audience that the legislation in Mexico comes from or dates back to 1947. So you can imagine that is definitely outdated. But if you want, you can go and read everything Abib Sher said and told Dami on SBC Noticias, and make sure you subscribe to the newsletter because everything we talk about Spain, we will cover there as well. Also SBC News and all the SBC Media Network. But Ted, going back to Spain, do you think the 2025-2026 period will be seen as a renaissance for Spanish gambling?
Well, I'm going to extend by saying that I can't use the word renaissance for Spanish gambling.
Okay, then
I'll
leave my brush aside. Yeah.
A renacimiento, shall we say that?
Okay, that works better.
Or revolución. No, look, I think the prospects are brightening in Spain. However, there's still a lot of kind of chaotic order in the backdrop of what's going on and what the regulators want. And there are also kind of strong aspects to the Spanish economy, which is actually doing very well compared to its Western neighbors. It's also gathering like a lot of interest from American backers. So things are changing in Spain. However, it really just applies. It's going to come down to what political swings around the corner. I don't think it has that strong a platform as a market such as Italy.
Yeah, definitely. We need to keep an eye on Spain and what the government does, because a lot changing, like the landscape has changed a lot, even though like the trend has been the same, the direction has been kind of the same, but a lot changing in Spain. So make sure you subscribe to all SBC Media newsletters to keep up to date. Make sure you subscribe to iGaming Daily on your preferred podcasting platform, and follow us on TikTok as iGaming Daily Podcast, where you will find snippets of the show. Thank you very much, Ted Menmuir. Thank you very much, Damian Martinez. I am Fernando Noodt, and thank you very much, Anaya McDonald, for producing this episode. To our listeners out there, we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily Podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.